Hello, everyone. My name is Sierra, and you are listening to the Layers Podcast. Welcome in. I hope that you all are doing so good today. We are going to talk about one of my favorite topics. We're going to talk about love. All right, so in this topic, I was honestly thinking about how impactful and life changing love is when you express it and give it to yourself and others rightly. And so I found myself reading in First Corinthians, and I was reading in First Corinthians, one of the areas of my study was about what does love look like. So a lot of times whenever I hear a definition or whenever I hear a word, I'm like, what does that actually mean? And so I want to read the definition of love to you guys. I am reading from the She Reads Truth Bible. You guys are more than welcome. I enjoy it because it is, I appreciate just the way that things are written, and then there's a lot of like insights and text and things like that. So, yeah, but I'm reading from First Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, is not boastful, is not arrogant, is not rude, is not self seeking, is not irritable, does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. For tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put aside childish things. For now we see only a reflection, as in a mirror, then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, as I am fully known. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. When I thought about how real the emotion of love is, it made me want to ask the question of what does love mean when you understand it as an act, the act of love. And when I was reading this, of course, the part that says love is patient, right? For so many people, even for myself, I have to be conscious of the fact that when it says love is patient, I'm like, that means that I am not only responsible for being patient with others, which is where I find myself more patient with other people than sometimes I feel with myself. I also have to be patient concerning me. And love has made me look in the mirror. It's made me look at how I treat my family. It's made me look at how I treat the people that are an extension of me. Everybody in this world is an extension of yourself in a way. I want to be honest and say that if you look at others the way that you look at yourself, how would you then treat their behavior? How would you then respond to their acts of love? And if it's not a loving act, what would your response be? And in order to answer that, I'd have to be able to answer the question, what is love? I'd have to be able to recognize love when I see it. So if I see someone that's being patient with me, if I see someone that's being kind with me, I know, okay, this is love. This is what love is and what it looks like. If I see someone that is not looking at my outfit and being envious of it, but instead they are or they don't desire what I have because they understand their own value and who they are, then I know, okay, that is love. And where it says it's not self seeking, oh my goodness, this piece, I think this is for all of us because sometimes we just, as humans, just have selfish motives. And sometimes we need to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Why am I going into this? That is one of the benefits of ABA, or behavior analysis. And I say that because I look a lot of times and I'm like, okay, hold on. What is my intention here? And I hear a lot of like preachers and teachers that they'll talk and they'll say, God, your heart, like God is after your heart. And it took me some time to understand what that meant and to understand what that looked like. Because when you say God is after my heart, I'm like, I know my heart. My heart says, I want this, and that's what my heart is. But when it says to know your heart, it means not only to know that you want something, but also to know why you want something. Why do you desire it? What is your desire and why? What's the why behind it? And the why behind it always answers how you will handle what's given or who is given to you. And I think that that is important to consider and to remember, especially because love impacts everybody that you're around. And I often, even in my family, I will sit with them and I'm just like, I have siblings, I have my parents, and people don't always we're not always super like, hey, they're like, girl, Sierra, you are getting on my nerves, or they might say that to me, I might say that to them, but the truth of the matter is that if love is not self-seeking, then that means that you are intentional with the way that you show up for them and the way that you show up for yourself. And so if you're self seeking, then you think that your actions only impact you. This is a big one, but I'm gonna say it because this is one thing I've been trained in. You might think that the food that you eat only impacts you, but it doesn't. It impacts everybody around you. Is it okay to have a milkshake from, here every now and again? Absolutely. But if you have milkshakes every day for 10 years, some people are just built like that and they're still healthy. But for the most part, like, it causes issues, your wife or your husband or your children or your siblings. There are people in this world that care about you. Don't you know we need you? And so that is one of the things that I consider a lot when I think about love and how I show up for others and how I show up for myself. This has really helped me in the way of how I treat people when they do something that I am not a fan of. I had to learn this. My mom has taught me this. She used to say all the time growing up, she'd be like, it's not always what you say, it's also how you say it. And I also know that from working in ABA is that sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it and it's how you respond to it. And love requires a response. And so if I'm going to respond to you in love, one of the things that I need to know is, what took place? Am I just showing up because I love you? Great. Or was there an action done and I need to respond to you in love? And I think that's a really big one. Um, is if there was an action done, how do I respond to this person in love? And ABA therapy has taught me that because I'll tell my story. I My mouth, guys. my mouth has sometimes gotten me in trouble, more so with my family, but there have been times where I was arguing with my sisters, and if you heard it, you'd probably be like, oh my goodness. Until one day I reached maturity and God was like, yeah, we're not going to keep doing this. And I was just like, okay, how do I what is it that I'm doing wrong? And understanding that even if somebody does something to you, you are still responsible to respond in love. And what does responding in love look like? It could look like distance, right? Not really. Not, the Bible doesn't say anything about responding to love and distance, but where it says love is patient, love is kind. Kind. If you're kind, I think that you're also honest enough to tell someone something is bothering you, or you are honest enough to let someone know that this behavior was out of line, and kind enough to let them know that don't do this, and you correct the behavior. Or you don't correct the behavior, but you show a different way, a different process, if that makes sense. If you work in a setting where you are teaching, or if you work in a setting where you're teaching, right? One of the things that I learned being a supervisor is that it is not kind for you to not tell someone the truth and for you to not correct their behavior. One of my old supervisors actually taught me that. I'd just be like, I felt so uncomfortable giving feedback, and I'd just be like, I just want to be kind, like I want to be kind. And she's just like, well, it's not kind if you don't tell them the truth, because eventually at some point they are going to run into a wall when you could have just showed them a different path to go on. And all you're responsible for is showing them the different path. You are not responsible for forcing them to take a different path. You are just responsible for showing it to them and making it known that this is the path of correct behavior or correct actions. Um, and when I learned that, I was like, oh, you know what? It's not kind to not tell the truth. And so it really made me reevaluate how I approached honesty and how I approached truth and how I approached conflict. Because I used to be one of the people that was just like, we are either good or we're not. And no more black and white thinking, you know? Now we can add some color, we've got some boundary lines and all of those things. I do think black and white thinking is good for drawing out boundaries. However, having color in your life and understanding that people have their own experiences. I understand why I have done some of the things that I've done, and I can do that because I I have lived my own life. I haven't lived everybody else's life. And so with that, that's really what teaches you patience, because being patient allows you to realize that this person has their own life that they have experienced and that maybe I don't know anything about. And boundaries help people figure out where the line is and what not to cross and where it violates or, enters into the realm of love. One of the parts of chapter 13 that really stuck out to me was verse 3. It says, and if I give away all my possessions, and if I give over my body in order to boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. I read that and I don't know why, but I was like, wait a second. It says, if I give away all my possessions, if you are a giver at heart, I want to talk to all my givers. I'm a giver as well. But if you are a giver at heart and you are constantly giving and constantly pouring into others, but you don't have love, then it meant nothing. And a lot of times that is a sign that you should be also open to giving to yourself, because for you to give everything away, let's say I'm poor because I gave all my money away, but no love came in. That's that's not love. That is not what love looks like. If somebody comes in and they are demanding all of these things from you and you're giving it to them, but there's no love that enters in, there's no patience that enters in. They're not patient with you, they're not kind with you, they envy you, maybe they're still boastful, they're arrogant, maybe they're rude and self-seeking, and all of these things keep happening, but it's you're like, I'm giving, then the truth is that that is not love. Love does not enter in that way. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I didn't understand that I can give and love still should enter in. And so that is understanding how to put boundaries around your life. How to put boundaries. How to put boundaries around your life and how to put boundaries around what you all right. Sorry. Well, not sorry. Let me continue on. Um, love gives you this, it puts you in this area or this arena where you have to recognize who you are and what you're giving, and if you are giving all of those same things to yourself. And so the Bible says that, the Word of God, the Bible says that love, where does it say this at? It's somewhere in there. You guys know I'm going to tell you go read your Bible. But it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And personally, I have found myself in positions and work settings and friendships in so many areas and arenas where I was giving and not receiving love. And that is not part of loving yourself. That is saying that you can figure it all out and do it by yourself, and you can love yourself and love everybody else. And that's not what love is actually about. And then when it says, if I give over my body in order to boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. I read that and I was like, wait, wait a moment. Because honestly, how many of us have shared ourselves with somebody? Um, or maybe you go work out and you work on your body super hard, but it didn't let love in. And it's just like, that's not what unlocks the door for love. What unlocks the door for love is truth and honesty and a humble nature. You know, someone that's willing to accept love, somebody that's willing to be transparent, someone that is willing to be open and patient, someone that knows and understands their boundaries. That's another one, because it's not love if you constantly violate someone, right? And that only comes when you have an understanding of who you are and what you desire. And that might be a different note for some people, especially if you grew up in an environment where you were required to answer yes, or you felt as though you were required to answer yes, or maybe that's what was modeled for you. And now in your heart, you're just like, okay, I want to say yes, but no, I don't want to do that. And that's just understanding that love is so big and it stretches so wide that and it goes so deep that there are going to be moments and times where you put boundaries in place so that you don't lose yourself, or so that you don't push people away, or so that you maintain a lane of respect. And that is just understanding how to continue moving in love. I don't want to just feel like I love you, but I want to actually love you. And so that really gave me some insight and made me think about value and how I value myself. Um, and this has come from addressing my own deep roots and traumas, and which is, you know, kind of what we just talked about. But I want to be intentional about sharing the fact that being yourself, showing up as yourself, if you are not received as just who you are, then it's not love. If you have to put a mask on, if you have to become someone different, that is that's not love. That is a misconception, because that just means that you haven't, or that as a, what am I trying to say here? It's a misconception because it means that you haven't been able to yet recognize where your own boundaries are. There's another area where I think about walking away when love is not. That was a huge one. I had to learn that. I had to learn what it meant to walk away. And nobody taught me that. You know, I was just like, no, we don't walk away. I would not walk away from friendships. I would not walk away from people. I'd just be like, no, they're in my life. I love them. I will not let them go. However, understanding that love is so good and it's so deep, it's so real, that it intentionally pushes you in and out of different spaces in life. And so that means that love might draw you in, love might push you out. And that is because I think God is so good about orchestrating us in a way that we understand not only how to give love, but how to let love in, and how to exemplify love, and what that looks like all across the, whatever you're doing in whatever arena, whether it's at work or it's at home, or if it's in your family, in your extended family, in your church community. There are just so many different areas where we just need to consider, okay, this is my boundary. If you cross it, maybe there's grace. But if you continually cross this boundary, you're not loving me and I'm not loving myself, which then means I'm in turn not loving you. And so that is how you break the cycle. That's the thing that a lot of people, I feel, maybe have been missing is, we hear so much about generational cycles and traumas, and how do we pass on generational blessings. We hear a lot about this with finances and wealth. One area that we should talk about this is also in love and health. Those are probably the two biggest ones, is because understanding that passing on generational love means that you are raising up people and a standard in your household to act in love at all times. And so you are teaching people how to be patient. You're teaching them how to be kind. You're teaching them to be respectful, not arrogant, not boastful, humble, but also confident. Confident enough to know who they are and what they offer. It says, love finds no joy in unrighteousness. And so if you have someone that is unrighteous, which means acting in low morale or character, that then for me would prompt me, okay, how do we address this behavior in love? How do we change this behavior? And what is the other person's desire to change? Because you can't force that. And one of the areas that I think that's important is understanding how to respect yourself. And when you do that, you draw a line for others to understand that this is what respect looks like, and this is how you should treat people. Okay? I am really big on treating people well, but I believe that because I had to learn that. I used to just think it was just being nice. And then once I began studying in ABA, I learned that nice is not always what is helpful, because helpful means that we're shifting something, that somebody learned something in the process. I think as a teacher, you you teach and you learn. You never stop being a student. You are always learning, no matter how old the person is that you are, the learner is that you're teaching. And so those are some of the things that I want to think about. Some of those generational blessings. Passing on a generational blessing of love means that you are passing on an intention to teach you, and that starts in your home. It starts with the mother and the father. That starts with the marriage. It starts there, and then it branches into your children, into your children's children, and it goes through the house. And love, the area of honesty, is also a big one, because a lot of times I think I've noticed that as a culture, the emotion of love is embraced, but not the truth of love. And love is truth. It's honest, and it might tell you about yourself. It doesn't have to be in a negative way, but love will absolutely teach you to be mindful and to be intentional about the way that you speak to people, about the way that you treat people. You never know who you're going to need. I used to hear that all the time growing up. You never know who you're going to need. Don't burn all your bridges down. You never know who you're going to need. And the what that is saying is make sure that you are acting in love towards the people that are in your life. And Another area that I think about this in is security. Security. How do we feel secure in love? I think this shows up differently for everyone. I personally feel secure in love when love responds, because love responds in such a way where it's caring and it's intentional, and it's like, hey, come to me, I want to talk to you, or um, I see that you're feeling this way, or I see that you might be feeling this way. Let me pour into you, or let me help you, or how can I help you? How can I serve you? That goes with servant leadership. The leadership at my church, they teach about that all the time. My pastor is so intentional about acting in servant leadership, and that's one of the things that I learned about with my the way that my previous position at work was another thing where you understand that the higher that you go in every position, in every arena, that means that you are serving. You're serving more people, you're serving at a larger capacity, right? So everybody has wanted the title of a CEO. Well, not everybody has wanted the title of a CEO, but I know when I was younger, I was like, I want to be a CEO or a CFO. I don't know why I said that, but that's what I wanted. And now that I think about it, I remember working under my supervisor. Oh my goodness, she was amazing, and I remember always telling her, "You have three brains." And she'd be like, "What are you like?" And I'm like, "Do you see what you've created?" But as she's gotten elevated, one of the things that I realized is that she had more responsibility. She was responsible to answer for more things. She was responsible for more people, and so it caused her to serve in more arenas. And so she was super confident. She taught me everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of what I know now comes from her, and comes from her the way that she was very intentional about letting me in and kind of seeing her own process. um, that's what taught me about leadership. And when I think about that, that also goes into how you run your house. It goes into how you run your life. That area is one of the things where I've learned that if it can't translate from this arena to the next arena, then there's a disconnection, and that means that there's something that needs some work. And one of the areas with your family is that everything that you do with your family flows outward. It flows out into your work. It flows out into your ministry, your job. It flows out into public service. It flows out into your friendships. And when you get to a place that you understand the intention and the build and structure behind your family, then you understand that everything that you do comes from that arena. And I've always heard it said, I want to say it's Bishop T.D. Jakes. He has said it where he's like, are not gonna get an A in everything every single time, every single day, because that's a lot of you wear a lot of hats. You're responsible for a lot. And if you start with home, then there is you are more effective in every other place. What you what you do, what is the saying? I say it all the time, and it's evading me right now. What the way you do one thing reveals how you do all things. And what that means is just if you start where it really matters, then every other area of your life will get that same impact. And it just means that love starts with family in whatever stage or setting of life that you're in. And so maybe you're like me, maybe you're single and an adult, and you have your family where you have your parents or your siblings, and maybe your siblings have their own family. But the truth is that love still starts there. And if that means that love starts with your family, everything that you do with and for your family flows out from you. So you could be great at what you do at work. You could have 1,000,001 friends. You could have all of these things. But if love is not the center of where you are and the way that you move throughout your life, you gave your body over to work. Okay, so you worked day in, day out. You built yourself up a great and wonderful career. But where's the love? And how did you let it in? And did you let it in? Did you cultivate it? And I think that's the generational blessing that so many people need. So many people need generational blessings of love and the practice of love. I think that's important. Not the feeling, but the practice. We want the feeling comes, It's like working out. Sometimes you don't feel like working out, but the practice of working out is what gets your body in shape and what builds muscles and gets you in the place that you need to be. Same thing with love. I might not feel like being loving towards you because maybe you weren't being loving towards me, or maybe I'm having a hard day and I don't want to right now. But the shift is when you go, it doesn't matter if I want to or not. This is the practice that I do. And whatever you practice, that's what you produce. So, yeah. Love, boundaries, recognizing love, all of those things are so important. But, and, not but, and recognizing it for yourself is the piece that keeps you grounded in a way that you can pour in to everything and everyone around you. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Layers podcast. This was another episode. I didn't use a story today. We definitely use 1 Corinthians. I will always tell you, like I always do, please go read your Bible for yourself. It's nice to kind of get lost in it sometimes. And sometimes it's just good to know, for like get it on the inside of you. That way you can recognize love when you see it and when it finds you. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.